couple of things there that I think are really important. People need to remember that being an athlete and like a proper athlete is in no way healthy. We have this like real romance with the idea that, these high level athletes, whether whatever sport it is, AFL, CrossFit, these must be the healthiest people in the world. And they're usually some of the people who have the most amount of soft tissue injuries, most amount of constant body work and things like that to keep them going. Because anytime you specialize that heavily into something, the body can only hold on for so long. So we really do need to stop that romanticism, because it's not helpful at the end of the day, because you're holding yourself up to a false god almost in why are they so healthy. And like, look at I get my favorite ones, like any ex-AFL or rugby player, like 5 years after they retire, they're usually looking a bit rough, especially if they had a long career. So let's behave ourselves a little bit on that one, right?
The people you want to talk to, talking to us. I'm Nick.
And this is Ricky, welcoming you to another episode of the Buffalo Tribe podcast.
Alrighty, welcome back, ladies and gents. We have a super special guest today, as always special, but in this case very special because I haven't seen him in a little while, is my good friend, Dr. Nathan Bridger.
Hey buddy, how we doing?
I'm good, man. How are you? How's things over in sunny WA?
Oh mate, we are kicking up. All these years of being the most isolated state in Australia is finally paying dividends, because you would not know, apart from the lack of domestic and international travel, that Corona had been a thing around here. Frankly, it's rainy but also sunny today in true WA fashion, and people are just hanging out and getting on with life. So it's the place to be.
It's I'm feeling like I'm in the same boat. I mean, I'm in Queensland at the moment, and chatting to my parents who are in lockdown near Melbourne, seems like it's two different countries.
Dad's still in Victoria and in lockdown as well. Not that, respectfully to Dad, not that it's changed that much. He was known for a bit of hermitude anyway, but I think it's the loss of the ability to do something else if you wanted to that is affecting you most.
Not that you would actually go do it, but that you have the chance to.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, I can't even go rock climbing. It's like, you've never been rock climbing. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop making it pain in the ass for everybody else.
So for those of you that don't know Nathan, Nathan is one of my good friends who also happens to be a wonderful chiropractor and wonderful human to boot. We've known each other for a couple of years now, through training at the same gym, and me regularly going and complaining to him about once a week for him to fix all my problems in life, which actually works out pretty well. But haven't been able to get in for treatment for quite a while. I think last time he treated me was actually in Bali.
Well, let's say that legally that never happened. I may have like shown you how to do things in Bali. Disclaimer right there. But yeah, I mean, the last time I think we even caught up was in Bali, where I was there for a Bucks weekend, and you were just continuing to gallivant and live around there.
Just living the dream.
Oh mate, I mean, mind you, fun adjunct. I found out one of my now ex-neighbor. Turns out when I moved into this little like 6-house complex, so the person in D is a friend I went to uni with who is also a chiropractor. She was telling us how the one that was in A, they was frantically packing when COVID started. The mum was Indonesian, dad was Aussie. And he was talking about how they needed to get out of Australia because it wasn't safe and they were going back to Bali, which, no offense to anybody in Bali, does not seem like the move I would have made in the COVID situation.
Well, funnily enough, my brother, who you also know, he made the same decision. And the day before they locked down the borders in Australia, he flew back to our house in Bali and he's been living out his days by the pool and surfing. So
it doesn't sound terrible. I guess it's more if things go poorly, then it would be poor. It's one of those like, you're just cashing in on the fact that it's not going to go bad.
Yeah, he's always been a gambler, so hopefully it pays off for him. But
hopefully he doesn't hit snake eyes anytime soon.
Speaking of that, kind of brings us around to the topic of discussion for today, when things do go wrong. So, and A topic that is obviously quite near and dear to my heart at the moment is injury and working through injury, as I've been lucky enough to sustain a knee injury. And over the years, as I've chatted to Nath, he's been one of the healthcare professionals who I've seen who has always advocated moving through injury and doing what you can, as long as it's not causing, I'm paraphrasing here, but as long as it's not causing further pain or doing further damage, movement is obviously something we should strive to keep doing.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like one of the, I guess, biggest pet peeves I have, and it goes across my profession and any other health profession, is where people come in from an injury, particularly athletic people, and they're told as treatment just to stop doing something, right? It's just like, and it's not just stop doing it for a week, it's stop doing it for life. It's like, you did that, now you don't. And at the end of the day, like, avoidance isn't treatment. Like any practitioner that tells you that just avoiding something is the way to get better is someone that you should basically spit in their face and run away. Like, probably not. Probably right now, that's a move that's not going to go well.
Illegal right now.
Yeah, I know. Probably illegal all the time, but you get the point, right? Like, it's not that it's just unhelpful. It makes people develop poor, like, coping strategies and poor beliefs around body fragility.
Yeah.
And frankly, the body is not that fragile. And so if we're going to keep telling people that, sitting for a few hours a day is going to is worse than smoking and all these other things. And listen, I'm the first to admit that there were times where I held similar beliefs. But if we really look at it, yeah, like those kind of things aren't ideal, but the body's not that fragile that it can't be improved and fixed. And when we have injury, the goal is always to make sure that we, through rehabilitation or whatever we want to call it, that we have a minimum effect to our current performance levels. And if anything, we're able to continue to develop why we're injured.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty important goal. I mean, like, obviously the goalposts may change a little bit while you're injured. But whether that means you're changing the goal entirely or you're changing the way that you get to that goal, you can still keep progressing and keep moving in most cases.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I'm first to admit that we're sort of being general here. There are definitely certain things that will make quite dramatic changes, but they are the rarity rather than the sort of the common, which most people seem to believe that that's the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously I've been doing all the Google researching I can lately on
Good.
How to recover from injury. Turns out that I definitely have 12 different types of cancer.
Oh.
When I just thought I had a simple knee injury.
You need 47 different types of stem cell injections, I'm sure.
Hey, if I could, I would. But it's interesting, like in that research and like through friends sending me different people to follow and look at, I found a guy on Instagram. His name is Ben Patrick. On Instagram, he's called Knees Over Toes Guy.
Yeah.
Which straight away the name got me because that's how I've always tended to squat. But he has like an interesting way of looking at it in terms of like, all right, so you have this issue. He's not a medical practitioner, but what we can do is try and develop the ability of the knee to deal with this and develop all those abilities around it, which will then in turn, I guess, limit pain, regain movement, regain mobility. And it's one of those things where it's like a similar view, I think, to what we've spoken about before, in that, you may be limited by that injury, but if we strengthen the areas around it, if we do the accessory work that we need to, you can definitely regain that ability while it's healing.
Yeah, 100%. And then even when we do have significant like structural challenges, and some of those can definitely be permanent, in probably the majority of cases, we can always out-function structure, right? That's the beauty of the human body. Like, there's all these people out there talking about compensation and these bad compensation patterns. Yeah, those exist, but we can use them in a positive way to, if you've got a limitation in a certain joint's ability to move, well, we can try and steal it from elsewhere if we still want to achieve certain things. So, like, Ben Patrick says, it's, there's that idea of redeveloping something. It comes down to, the simple theories. It's if you want to do something, it's reps and sets. So if we want to improve with something, and we have, I guess, non-standard movement, well, there are definitely ways of making that the standard, making it a positive for your body rather than negative.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things I think I've seen too. Like one of my favorite studies that I always like to quote when someone is injured, and like obviously in my profession of training people, I don't give any advice on how to recover from injury or how to treat it. I refer to people who are much smarter and better educated than I am. But there is a study of, even doing single limb work, like obviously the non-working limb also gets a benefit from that. So that whole idea of like, hey, do nothing is like, well, like at the moment I'm trying to pump out on my right leg, like single leg quad extensions, hamstring curls, eccentric squats, like doing everything I can to try and maintain muscle mass in the injured leg. Because the body, like you said, when the body's pretty smart and it's not as fragile as we think, it actually craves symmetry and balance. So it's going to do its best to help you out there.
100%, right? And like the other thing, like in your example right now, well, sweet, we now may not be able to squat or deadlift super well on one leg, but now we can work on the infamous bench press, which we know all the CrossFitters hate, or seated overheads. Like there's still an entire half of the body at bare minimum that can still be worked very, very appropriately and even aggressively, just being mindful of what's going on. And even then we come back to the injured limb, in your case with the knee, we would expect that even within a short amount of time, we could use things like isometrics and that and just create holding force in certain positions that are relatively painless to continue that development. And that's for what we'll often do in an injury case where there is not a need or potential for surgery, is that's the way we advance it. We're going to try and do as much as we can everywhere else on the body. And then we're going to start with sort of static hold work, slowly progress to partial range, slowly return to full range, focusing mainly on stability, so controlling through it, and then strengthening over the top of it. And before we know it, bam, it's looking a lot better. And even in a lot of cases where we're either planning or we're thinking about surgery, we'd still generally get people to start with that under the eyes of what we always call prehab, where, once you have surgery, you're going to have to do rehab on that limb anyway, just to get it back to firing. Why not bring it in at a better state? Why wait, let it decondition and get worse? Why not push it as hard as we can comfortably, continue it to hold position or maybe even increase or improve its development? And then once you've had the surgery, you're already starting from a better point, And I get pain is annoying, right? Like there's no denying pain's a real pain in the ass, if you pardon the expression, but it's at the end of the day, it's going to happen anyway. So we might as well just try and be better throughout it.
Yeah. It's definitely like, if you do have that surgery, like I'm obviously planning on having surgery.
Yeah.
But if you do have that surgery, I'd rather go in at 60% of my ability rather than letting it dwindle to 20%.
Yeah.
Have that starting point be so much harder. But it's interesting. I feel like you've been sneaking a peek at my workout plan at the moment. We talk about bench press and seated overhead press. I'm like, all right, so all of the things that I used to be relatively good at when I was doing bodybuilding, I now suck at because basically CrossFit. And not bagging out CrossFit there. It's just that when we need to move a weight from shoulder to overhead, there are more efficient movement patterns for that than a press, if you're allowed to, like, a jerk, pushing under the bar, and not that much horizontal pressing. So I was like, all right, I can set myself some goals like we spoke about before, change the goalposts a little bit. Obviously, Olympic lifting's out of the question at the moment, but bench press is back on, strict press is back on, strict pull-ups.
Basically, it's all pump city right now. It's just getting sweet moves.
Every day is upper body day, Nathan. Every day.
Just like back to 18-year-old you.
I've got I signed up to the local World's Gym up here.
Good. Strong.
Like, all right, I'm back on the machines, pin loaded everything.
In full disclosure, I've recently done similar. So I've just re-signed up to what's called Revo over here. And it's just some dirty pin loaded, beautiful plate loaded work, a couple of days a week, and then some more dynamic stuff on the outside. And I think this is another idea of changing the goalposts. with increasing age, and age is not a factor in limitation, but it's more that I think a lot of us have accumulated a variety of things in the body over the years. There is times to be able to not even change the goalpost, but just temporarily switch the approach to allow the body to, recompensate or to recalibrate in order to function further. Similar as people do in training protocols when I was in powerlifting, we have accumulation, we have intensifications, we have a block where we're going to work on conventional, sumo, whatever. Well, right now for me, I'm working on just basic muscle hypertrophy and enjoying training. And I can always come back to more heavier dynamic work when I have both the time. Because at the end of the day, the thing that I think everyone forgets in life in general, but particularly in injury, is the stress component outside of it. Yeah. And because if you're injured, if I get injured, it could affect my ability to earn, which would affect my ability to look after my family. All these things start to just accumulate on top. And then we go back into training and we just try and hammer it again. Sometimes just switching the style of training temporarily can give us the benefit we need without that stress risk.
That's the thing. It's like you go through that risk reward too. I mean, I obviously my goals in training have changed a little bit over the years, as most people's do. Obviously, I have no interest anymore in being an athlete or being at that level of fitness. For me at the moment, it's really just about being fit and healthy. And so this injury, while it's annoying, just means that I change the style of training, but the goals are still attainable.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things there that I think are really important. People need to remember that being an athlete and like a proper athlete is in no way healthy. We have this real romance with the idea that, these high level athletes, whether whatever sport it is, AFL, CrossFit, these must be the healthiest people in the world. And they're usually some of the people who have the most amount of soft tissue injuries, most amount of constant body work and things like that to keep them going. Because anytime you specialize that heavily into something, the body can only hold on for so long. So we really do need to stop that romanticism, because it's not helpful at the end of the day, because you're holding yourself up to a false god almost in why are they so healthy. And look at my favorite ones, any ex-AFL or rugby player, 5 years after they retire, they're usually looking a bit rough, especially if they had a long career. So let's behave ourselves a little bit on that one, right?
It's it's interesting. I mean, I have clients, and this isn't just a local or Australian thing. We've got clients worldwide now, but there is this romantic idea of people wanting to have a program that's set out like they're a full-time athlete. They want to have 2 sessions a day, active recovery days. And it's I had some interesting feedback the other day from a guy I've been training for a couple of years now. And he's a master's category athlete, still very athletic guy, very fit. But this last year, he's been dealing with complaint after complaint in his body. And this is something where the gym he trains at as well, he also does their classes on top of programming. It's when you program X amount of volume for someone. Yeah. I'm not programming for you to do X, but then put Y and then Z on top of it as well. And he said to me this last week, he really cut back. He's like, oh my God, my body feels amazing. I've been training 45 minutes a day. Everything feels good. My lifts are up. My fitness is up. It's more is not better. Yeah. Better is better.
Yeah, 100% right. And almost any person that comes through my door, probably between the ages of 17 and 25, 99% of the time, my job is just to make them do less in the gym.
Yeah.
And they're I don't know why I'm not developing. You look at the thing and they're running at least 1, if not 2 a day, 6 days a week. They're running, 40, 50 sets per day of exercises. And you're just you're not injured, you're under recovered.
Yeah.
And the challenge is, and listen, you and me were probably both the same at that age. I believed it too. I was if I'm getting this good at this much, I could get better with more. But it's not true. If you can't recover from it, and you just can't get the benefit from it. And I've had people who've taken them down to simple as 3 sessions a week, 45 minutes, when they're used to doing 6 days a week for 2 hours, and their lifts are coming up, they're feeling better, But still, that little like voice in the shoulder sitting there, and 6 weeks later, they're like, so can we start doing more? And I'm like, well, do we need to do more? Now I get, full caveat to that, for some of us, that time in the gym is for mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a requirement of it. In that case, yeah, we can work with it, but it's not just adding more for the sake of it, right? And that's where we have to talk again about what's the actual goal. If the goal is to perform at a higher level, well, then we want to do the minimal amount we can to get the maximum benefit and stay healthy doing it. For what I laugh about the most with especially my CrossFitters, my powerlifters, my strongmen, you know, that the end of the day, especially for my powerlifters, the sport literally involves you versus an inanimate object, right? It is just steel bars and plates. And at the end of the day, they always win. Like, if you stay in the game a long time, it's great. But at the end of the day, that thing's going to win. Yeah. It doesn't have an issue. It doesn't break down. You do. So it's a tool, but we've got to remember that it always wins. And so if you're just going to constantly push yourself at high level, it doesn't get tired. It's not had a bad fight with its partner. It's not had a bad day at work. It's 200 kilos. It's 300 kilos. It's whatever it is for you. It never changes. And one day it's going to come and catch you if you don't do the right thing or you're not sensible about it. By the same token, because I always like to double it round, I'd still rather potentially get injured doing that than die from sitting on the couch doing nothing. So you got to play both games, but we have to understand that when it comes to these sports, injuries are normal. They're usually not that big a deal. And it's just about more psychologically how we handle it than anything else.
Yeah, it's that having that mindset of like, all right, this may not be something you can avoid, even though you do your best efforts, you do your mobility, you do your prehab, you know, you get treatment. But at the end of the day, you know, like you said, when you are dealing with that object that is just steel bar, steel plates, things do happen in the gym. The body breaks down. I mean, something I shared the other day was the Russian powerlifter trying to squat 400 kilos and his knees just popped. And I think I had about 40 people messaging me saying, oh my God, what video did you just post?
Just not good.
I was kind of sharing it saying, well, you know, whenever I feel bad about my knee, I just watch this video. And that's one of those things where, like, you know, you don't really get to a higher experience level than what that guy is. But like you said, you know, just a slight off movement or an off day.
Accumulated fatigue, who knows?
Heavy training block beforehand. Like, injuries do happen, but I think it's all in like how you handle it when they do happen. And I'll be the first to admit, like, I had a nice little mopey week the other week where I got my MRI results and I went straight to the bottle shop and straight to the supermarket, and it was cookies and beer for about the rest of the week.
Delicious.
So I was like, you know what? I'm 32. There's probably a more mature way I can handle this now than what I did when I was 17. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to set myself some new goals. I know that for me, nutrition personally is a bit of a weakness just because I've always had the ability to out-train my diet to a certain extent. And while I can't do that right now, I was like, all right, I really got to focus on my nutrition. I can sharpen that up and just controlling the things that are within your control.
Yeah, like there's only so much that you can control at the end of the day. But if you take, for like, to stop using the same word, but if we take control of that, we're always going to be better off. And like, we are absolutely entitled to have those, like, you know, 24, 48, 72 hours of poor me, and then it's time to get back on it. And this is with regardless, right? And one of the things I really want to hit before we, you know, finish up today is people misunderstanding. If we come back to the idea of injuries before, and then people think that I'm injured, you know, I can't do anything anymore. What I like to call the Tim Tam syndrome, right? You ate one, so I might as well eat the whole packet. It's just kind of like what we now know for 99% of our soft tissue injuries, joint injuries, tendon injuries, ligament injuries, loading is the best thing for them. You know, we now get people light jogging on hamstring tears within 48 to 72 hours in a lot of cases because that stress on the tissue actually helps it heal. The human body is not like a piece of paper. You know, a piece of paper, we pull on the tear, it gets wider. In the human body, in 99% of cases, as we create tension on that tear, it actually helps it to heal better and stronger. So not loading those tissues as you're like healing is one of the worst things you can do. So we can do so much. And then, you know, I think this is one of the beauties of CrossFit, to give it its dues, is it's allowed the average trainer to have a lot better understanding of scaling, because there's always a scale, right? And that's why I think rehabilitation and strength training are one and the same. It's just the start point is low on the scale margin. So, you know, like you said, with your knee right now, there's likely, I'm aware of the nature of the injury, that we're going to need to go in and clean some things up. So be it. What that means though, but probably within a couple of weeks, you're going to be doing some single leg isometrics, things like that. You probably would do some light walking or just single leg stance work very quickly. Might do some banded work and things like that. Real low impact stuff. And then of course, we're going to build from that low impact. We're going to get into more strength. Then we're going to get into more resisted movement, which is one of the steps most people forget. Everyone's good at creating movement, but everybody forgets to learn how to resist movement in that position. And then we're going to go to dynamics, right? Then we're going to start towards jump, Olympic lifting, all that stuff. Now that could be 3 months, could be 6 months. There's a lot of what ifs right here. But if you follow that step, you're going to set yourself up in such a better state, because we know, because the research is very clear on it, that the biggest precursor to future injury is previous injury. Yay. But it's largely because most people don't do what they need to do to properly heal an injury. And the thing that I think we all need to remember, this will be one for you, my friend, when the pain goes, that's where the exercise work gets turned up. Yep. So my patients, one of the things I always say is, when I get you out of pain, we get you out of pain, your rehab exercises get turned up, they don't get turned off. Because most people feel good, and they're like, well, I don't need to do those anymore. It's like, no, we only just hit day one of where we get to really load this and make sure that you're at as low a risk as possible for this ever happening again. And what we see is people don't, and then they become the person who's had 7 knee surgeries or 15 shoulder surgeries, or they gave up the sports they enjoyed doing. And it was all because either one, sadly, a practitioner gave them terrible, terrible advice, or two, they didn't follow the advice they were given. And sadly, sometimes we have to lie in the bed we make.
I hear, and like, I know that that's definitely something that I could be guilty of in the past, and hopefully not in the future. It's funny how much time you make for the things that you enjoy in the gym, and how little time you make for the things you don't enjoy.
Yeah.
But
you have a coach or a training partner, because they will just put that shit in there, and then you have to do it.
Yeah. And it's so, like, you know, as a coach, like, I obviously should know better, because I crack it when people don't do their unilateral work or fix issues that we've seen. And then it comes to my tray, I'm like, oh, that's not fun. I'll do that later.
Yeah, you're like, we've got 5 sets of curls coming up right here. I'm just working on my unilateral work.
You say barbell curls and tricep push downs? Perfect.
Pretty much all we need to do.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the time today, Nath. I know you've got to get moving, but always good to have a chat, and get your perspective on things too. Much appreciated.
Pleasure, my friend.